People living in rural areas in Bastrop County say some of their wells have run dry. They thought a nearby turf company is to blame and called the KVUE Defenders to help. Investigative reporter Erica Proffer found a deeper problem that may impact us all.
Well, it's so dry, it's so sad.
Change may be constant.
This is where we get flooding.
But for Diane Watson,
if we ever get a flood.
This change came too fast. She took the KVUE Defenders to ranches in Page, Texas, to meet people losing their water.
So the creek is flowing a whole lot better now than what it was 2 or 3 days ago.
People like Roy Herms.
I mean, it wouldn't take anything to go ahead and have dried up the flow here.
Roy says his neighbor's water use
it's all spring fed.
Dropped the water level in his well and limited the flow here in this creek.
And they were irrigating.
Irrigation is typical in Bastrop County. Ranchers pump water to grow hay, but Roy's neighbor
a whole lot more
grows turf grass.
Yes.
The type of grass you see on golf courses, sports fields, and residential landscapes.
Yeah, this is the brush row that we're looking at right there.
Thomas Turfgrass, a sod company, owns this green grass on the other side of Roy's fence.
And you can see where the area that they've been irrigating.
Roy's problem is not only how much water gets used.
The hillside here, they've harvested that.
But when it's used.
At 12 noon, at 2:30.
And Roy isn't the only upset neighbor.
In a drought condition, where are the people going to get the water to water the grass they buy from him?
Wallace Dehart says the water on his land dwindled.
All the springs back there are gone.
These spring-fed ponds nearly dry.
So the artesian water, although it's great to have, it's really not good for cooking, but the cows love it.
The pumpless artesian well feeding his primary pond stopped flowing.
It's a Sahara desert back there. You came by the desert.
Wallace has one well equipped with a pump. He says if the water drops too low, he'd have none for his cattle, unless he paid to have the pump lowered.
My cows are thirsty.
This is part of the Lost Pines Groundwater Conservation District. It covers both Bastrop County and Lee County. The KVUE Defenders dug through conservation records, hydrology reports, and the state's well registry, and found the problem isn't one neighbor, it's hundreds. Records show nearly 3,500 wells in the district, and more than half of those were drilled since the last major Texas drought in 2011. Plus, these filings show domestic use for most of the wells, so they're not monitored. The state exempts domestic wells from permitting, and a district can only limit the size of the pump.
Adding pumping is always going to have added stress on the aquifer, whether it's an exempt well or non-exempt well.
Jim Totten is general manager of the Lost Pines Groundwater Conservation District.
In terms of a regional impact, I don't think that it's going to be the exempt that's going to be driving that.
Here, anything pumping more than 25,000 gallons of water a day requires a permit.
Every groundwater district's a little bit different.
And the KVUE Defenders found large volume pumpers can take water from here for use in other areas. This 2016 permit shows one company allowed to pump millions of gallons each day for customers in Hayes, Travis, and Williamson counties.
We were seeing some regional declines, product of our own production in neighboring districts.
What would it be?
It's 200 feet below the surface there.
Seth Thomas is farm manager at Thomas Turfgrass. He showed the KVUE Defenders how they operate and says his turf has benefits, such as controlling erosion and dust.
It has a cooling effect. It sequesters carbon dioxide.
We asked Thomas what he does for efficient water use. Make sure the shared water stays on his field. Minimize runoff.
Sprays in a pattern to where it's just circling around. And
some of these sprayers hang less than a foot off the ground.
The objective is just to get them as close to the ground as we can without them dragging the ground. It minimizes any evaporation.
Thomas says they spray what would be about a 1/4 inch of rain across the entire field. If it's a hot, dry season, he says these machines may operate multiple times a week. Cooler or rainy weather, maybe bi-weekly.
We're just trying to keep that surface moist.
And grass plugs on barren areas may require water during the hottest part of the day.
A freshly planted area is a lot more tender and a lot more susceptible to drying out.
We watched how they harvest. These machines dig up the grass and about an inch of its roots. To help retain water, workers then spread compost to help what's left of the roots regrow new blades. They dig holes to aerate, to have water to go deeper in that newly bare soil.
Down there, a good 8 inches.
To be water efficient, they'll repeat that process once new growth begins. The watering doesn't stop.
The main question for a groundwater district is how do you determine how much water a person owns under their property.
The Lost Pines Conservation Board will need to figure that out for Thomas Turfgrass. Company leaders filed a request for a permit to expand their operation. The district's draft permit shows they may cut that request by more than half, plus add 3 monitoring wells. Totten wouldn't comment on pending permits.
Whoever's applying, in theory, they own the land or they own the water rights under the land. It's very, very difficult for the district to flat out say no to a permit.
Leaving everyone bracing for change. The board is set to vote on the Thomas Turfgrass permit Wednesday. For the KVUE Defenders, I'm Erica Proffer, KVUE News.